In 2017, you had lots of different options for smartphones. Phones like the Epic LG V30, the iPhone 8, and the Galaxy S8 were all excellent options if you had the cash to spend on a flagship phone. But what if you wanted a mid-range phone that was still decent and not garbage? That phone, at least if you had Verizon, is the Asus Zenfone V Live. Now, this phone was a pretty good value back in its day. There's plenty we can put this phone up against, but one thing that I won't be able to test is calls and texts, as I don't have Verizon, and this phone can't be unlocked, sadly. Anyways, today we will be putting this phone through the ranks with photo and video tests against my personal S10 Plus, gaming performance, social media capabilities, and web browsing, just to name a few. But before we jump into that, you should at least hear the specs of the phone. So this phone has a 5.2-inch 1080p AMOLED display, which is insane for a $170 price point. Driving that display is the Snapdragon 820, which has two 2.15 GHz performance cores and two 1.6 GHz efficiency cores. So in heavy games, it will struggle. The GPU in this phone is the Adreno 530, which was very powerful and I think is actually bottlenecked by the lack of cores. It has 32 gigs of storage with 4 gigs of RAM, so not bad. It also has a fingerprint sensor, which works decently, but is not very quick. The selfie camera is 8 megapixels and is not great, period. And the main camera is a 23 megapixel sensor. It has a headphone jack, which you just can't take for granted anymore. It does have USB Type-C, which is really nice, as I hate micro USB. The battery is decently sized at 3000 milliamps and has 18 watts fast charging. No wireless charging though. Now I think we'll move on to what you people came here to see. Just how does this 5-year-old budget phone game? My choice of games covers a couple of big ones, older games that you can still download, and your Clash type games, with one of the games on the list. First up, we have Minecraft, which ran okay, with performance that was pretty fluid up until you had a lot of entities on the screen, and even 7-chunk render distance won't save you. However, you won't normally have tons of entities on the screen, so if you're playing the game normally in survival, you'll be fine. Next up is World of Tanks Blitz, which ran at 50 FPS, depending on what was going on, and I was able to perfectly easily play through several matches without issue, other than the smaller screen not being the easiest to see distant entities with. Castle Clash ran fine enough that whatever FPS it was running at, I couldn't care. The only time you could see the performance drop was in heavy battles or speeding up battles, where it could become quite choppy. GTA Vice City ran pretty good. I was able to perfectly play and complete some missions on this phone. Pocket Trip, a fast-paced 2D vertical game, ran great and loaded into races pretty quickly. An old favorite, Earn to Die, also ran great, and I couldn't complain while I was smashing zombies in the face. Honestly, you can still totally game with this phone, and that's without even touching old console emulation. But I think we should move on to the photo and video results. So, these pictures were taken at the same time of day with the Zenfone and IS-10 Plus as the control or referee, you could say. Honestly, given the price point of this phone, the photos turned out alright. With this first image here, you can definitely tell that the Asus phone is perhaps not great in lower light situations. However, it still turned out looking fine for the age of the phone versus the Samsung. In this second photo, the Asus phone did pretty good, although the photos were a touch more muted and the image was overall less sharp, even though it had more pixels to play with. With this third image, this was a test of how much detail the phone could keep in with distant subjects, and it did fine. Well, while this image is more splotchy on the Asus than it was with the Samsung, it did only cost a fifth the price. In this next image, the Asus phone struggled to keep the subject properly exposed without drowning out the top of the heatsink here. In this image, you can tell the Asus phone doesn't like close-ups very much at all. This last image is a night image test, and you could tell just how far we've come in that department in only 4 years. Also secrets. Alright, so here's what the video performance on the S10 Plus looks like. And of course you can also take a gander as to how the speaker sounds. So here we got the script I've been writing for this review, of course. It's not done yet. It really is not done yet, so that's a bit unfortunate. Yeah, I'm just working on it, and of course we have the very loud heater to keep me from freezing my butt off in this shack, for lack of a better term. So here's the Asus, and this is 1080-60 as well, and I should note this is in the same lighting as the S10 Plus. And it's not as bright, and it's actually quite a bit shakier, I've noticed, which is very interesting. So we've also got, still the loud heater going. Probably should have turned that off. And you can see just how much worse this camera is than the S10 Plus. But to be fair to this phone, it is a lot cheaper. A lot cheaper and a lot older. And also, secrets. So yeah, not bad, right? And if you can find a Gcam port for this phone, those images will look even better. Although that's for another day, perhaps. Next up, social media browsing. Now, all social media apps I tried did install and work fine, so that's definitely something it has over older phones, or phones stuck with a 32-bit CPU. Discord worked perfectly, and I was able to easily stream video and send pictures without issue, as well as text. Facebook worked fine, and yes, you could even browse the Facebook Marketplace, unlike my iMac G3. Reddit worked fine as well, and I was able to browse subreddits and watch video clips smoothly. But now we can move on to something a little more important, like web browsing and general usage. Since this is a relatively recent version of Android, you can use any browser you want. But I don't hate Google yet, so I decided to go ahead and just use Chrome. And using Chrome, I had no issues browsing mobile-optimized sites. All images loaded fine, as well as any links or videos that happen to appear on the site. This phone does run a version of Android that supports split screen, which, if you have never used that ability in Android, you have no idea how useful it can be. Copying info from one app to another, writing down stuff from another app in a Notes app, and all sorts of other combos. The skin of Android Asus is running here is not the quickest. Animations are a little slow and general fluidity feels like floaty somehow. But of course, because it's Android, you can go out and install any launcher you want. There was not much bloat installed either, which I'm always a big fan of, not having to disable 30 apps before I can use the dang thing. Anyways, let's head on to the conclusion. If you bought this phone back in 2017, you got a heck of a deal. With a pretty decent camera, decent processor, and nice features, you really got a lot for your money. Looking at modern phones at the same price point, it really does look pathetic, the kind of competition there is. If you have Verizon and can find one of these for under $70, I'd say try and get it. Anyways, that's it. I hope you enjoyed today's video. This took a lot of effort to put together. And to show support, I'd appreciate you liking the video and subscribing. I also have a Patreon where you can donate to me to help me create more videos like this in the future. And don't forget, Patreon supporters get exclusives, 24-hour early video access, and other random things. Anyways, DDT out.